Hey everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of The Enemy of the World, the fourth story of the fifth season of classic Doctor Who, starring Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor. The Enemy of the World is also the 40th story overall. It's 6 episodes long and it's written by David Whittaker. In addition, this is the last story to be produced by Innes Lloyd as Peter Bryan takes over in the next story. So, seeing that this is the 40th story overall, we are now practically a quarter way through classic Doctor Who, ladies and gentlemen. Well, if you count Shaded as the season 17 finale and the Trial of a Time Lord as four separate stories. So before October 2013, only episode 3 of this story actually existed in the archives, and fortunately, the remaining 5 episodes were found in the relay station alongside the Web of Fear in my home country of Nigeria, and so it's basically a bit of a special story to me personally. So the plot of the story is as follows. The TARDIS lands on an Australian beach in the 21st century, but this is no seaside holiday. Within minutes, the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria are under attack. They soon discover that the Doctor bears a startling resemblance to Leader Salamander, a would-be dictator intent on world domination. Before long, the Doctor and his companions are plunged into a dangerous game of espionage, intrigue, and deceit as they face off against the enemy of the world. So that is the plot of the Enemy of the World. So, in my opinion, I think the Enemy of the World is a phenomenal story. It's very action packed from the beginning to the very end, and it does have few faults, but it's fairly little, in my opinion. The production was really well done. The sets weren't anything out of the ordinary, but it was well done, especially Salamander's mansion in the European zone. I mean, I like the location work. I mean, that was really well done. The script was brilliant. The music was really nice. It had a nice dramatic feel to it, and I actually liked the camera trickery that they used in episode 6 with Salamander and the Doctor before, when Salamander was holding the Doctor against the TARDIS console. But even though Patrick Charlton was actually playing both roles, they actually used a bit of camera trickery. So that was really well done, and it looked very advanced for 1960 television. The Enemy of the World itself is a very different story to compared to the other stories of this season and possibly to the Patrick Charlton era, because this isn't based on the Siege story where it has no alien threats whatsoever. It's more of an espionage style James Bond story rather than your usual science fiction, big monsters, Daleks, Cybermen, or whatever. And I like that, and it proves that Doctor Who can actually explore other genres as well as other than the usual historical dramas or big sci-fi productions for the BBC standards anyway. And this story was directed by Barry Letts, who would actually go on to produce a vast majority of the John Pertwee era. And I would say that Barry Letts is actually my favorite Classic Who showrunner, and I say Letts did a pretty good job directing the story. The action scenes were fantastic, and it definitely felt like an actual spy movie. And I actually liked the bit when Jimmy actually punched one of the guys that was chasing him, the Doctor and Victoria, on the beach. And I actually liked the scene where Victoria shoved the tea trolley in front of the guards, and Astrid Ferrier, she was not afraid to get down and dirty and fight some of these dudes. So I would say the plot was really engaging, and the James Bond vibes that this story had really helped. Considering the fact that James Bond was starting to become popular in the 1960s, well, the movies of Sean Connery at this time of release, at the time the story came out. So I would say that this is pretty much Doctor Who cashing in on the 60s spy thriller craze. I mean, the pacing was really well done. I mean, there was very evenly done. It was very evenly done. No moments felt boring, and nothing really dragged at all. I mean, Patrick Charlton playing both Salim Malin and the Doctor was really good, and I actually like the fact and how the Doctor Salamander portrayal before episode 4 was pretty much lopsided. I mean, I actually liked how Charlton was playing Salamander a lot more than he did with the Doctor in episode 3, for example. I mean, we only got one scene of Charlton as the Doctor in episode 3, and Charlton pretty much played Salamander for at least most of episode 3, and that was really good. You definitely got to see more of an insight to Salamander's character. And if it was a bit more than that, it would have probably ruined that story a bit. There were some very nice plot twists. I mean, I never would have thought that Giles Kent was the one putting all the people down in the bunker and using an endurance test, even though it was actually Salamander who convinced the people that there was a nuclear war going on. The ending of the story was a really action packed. It was very tense as well. I mean, this is when Jamie saw the Salamander, who actually thought that was the Doctor still pretending to be Salamander, and he was trying to get Jamie to like operate the TARDIS. And Jamie, he's not, bless him, he's not really the smartest person in the world. I mean, he's smart, but not as smart as the Doctor or any other characters. But he noticed something was up, and he when Salamander pretending to be the Doctor was like telling him to like fly the TARDIS. He was like, Jamie was like, you never told me to touch. You never told me to like operate the controls. And obviously, we have the Doctor come in and said, "You're quite right, Jamie." And then that's when shit really goes down. And then Salamander and the Doctor get in a bit of a scuffle. Jamie is hanging on for dear life from the TARDIS pillar that was there, and then the Doctor was holding on to dear life whilst holding Victoria as well. And then Salamander was pretty much booted out of the TARDIS and into the time vortex. And that pretty much leads on to the next story, the Web of Fear. And I think the ending sequence was really well done. I probably said that that's probably like one of the best scenes in this story. Now on to the on-screen aspects. I mean, Patrick Chardon, he did an amazing job. I mean, I would say that this is probably one of his best performances as the Doctor. Considering the fact, well, yeah, during his time in Doctor Who, I mean, he was very good as the Doctor and very good as Salamander as well. And obviously he was doing double duty with as the Doctor and Salamander, and that's something William Hartnell actually did back in season three's The Massacre. But it was a lot more different compared to the other two stories, because in The Massacre was Hartnell was playing the Abbot a lot more than he was playing the Doctor, because obviously I think he went on holiday in episode 2, and then episode 3 was playing the Abbot, and then he becomes the Doctor again in episode 4. I think this is probably due to the fact that the writers didn't really want Hartnell to like stress himself out too much, because I think his health was failing as well. Well, but obviously, an Enemy of the World actually did it a lot better, because Charlton is obviously younger and more active and agile, and he was able to at least balance Charlton, the Doctor, and Salamander a lot better. And Charlton, I must say, he was a very convincing villain, and he was convincingly evil and a very opposite and very different to the Doctor. And obviously, Charlton as the Doctor was really good here. I mean, I liked how he was skeptical of Giles Kent's plan with Salamander in the beginning. I liked how the Doctor was pretty much demanding proof on how Salamander is evil, because you can't really take you can't really take his word on it, because he needed to see for himself. And that was a really good scene. I mean, that was quite clever as well, because the Doctor, it would be quite uncharacteristic for the Doctor to just take somebody's word and just go through the plan. Even though if it did happen, the story would have ended a lot sooner, but it was really well done. It definitely showed the Doctor's strengths. So Salamander was a great villain, but I'll get onto him a bit later on in this review. So Jamie and Victoria, they were really good in the first few episodes. Both Fraser Hines and Deborah Watling, they did great for what they were given. I mean, and they got a nice, well-deserved holiday in episode 4. And considering the fact they did carry a large chunk of episode 3, and they did so marvelously, we definitely got to see Jamie and Victoria's strengths as a duo, even though we actually see them as a duo a lot stronger in the previous story, the Ice Warriors, but here it was shown very well, and it's definitely really good. It definitely shows how Jamie actually cares for Victoria, especially in the fact when they were in the research center, and then Benedict was threatening to like harm Victoria in front of Jamie so he can get answers out of Jamie, and that was a very tough, scary scene. So, and I liked how Jamie actually got his own bit of the action, especially when, as I mentioned before, he punched one of the men, and that was after them on the beach, and I liked how he was pretty much his own action man companion. But he definitely showed his more action side here at this point, and I liked how he pretty much just jumped off and pretended to save Salamander's life so he can get Salamander's trust, and that was pretty cool. I must say. So, and Victoria, she was really adorable. I mean, she does get her own piece of the action later when she shoves the tea trolley in front of the guard so she can escape from Salamander's guard, but obviously it doesn't work. I mean, she was really adorable. I mean, I actually liked how when she was meeting Ferreira for the first time and she was like, "Can you cook?" and she was like, "Oh, I love eating and I'm hungry." It was a very funny scene, and later on, Jimmy Victoria was like describing the food she ate at home to Griffin the chef when he was asking her, "What can you cook?" and stuff like that. I mean, we definitely get to see the more fun, enjoyable side to Victoria, other than the whole screaming and all that. And thankfully, Victoria doesn't actually scream in this story, so that's very good. The guest casts were absolutely wonderful. The main ones actually managed to impress me. All of them actually impressed me the most. But I think the one that actually did stand out compared to all of them was Astrid Ferrier, who was portrayed by Mary Peach. If this was a Bond film, I mean, I would say she would have been the Bond girl alongside Ferrier. And Astrid, she was pretty damn cool. I mean, her first big moment was when the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria were on the beach chased by those other guys. I think they were, I'm not even sure who they were, but she comes in this in this helicopter and rescues them, and then obviously she gets shot trying to rescue them on the arm, but yeah, and then she was able to take the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria back to her safe house, and then that's how she was able to get the Doctor's trust. And she was a very good character. I mean, she definitely. I mean, when they were all escaping, she definitely beat up one of the guys that was there single-handedly. Another awesome character was Giles Kent. He was Astrid's boss, and he used to work with Salamander. But then when Kent started to realize that Salamander was dangerous, and he wanted to I think he wanted to try and get away. But then Salamander realized and then decided to discredit him. So he was actually wanted him. Salamander wanted Kent to be discredited, other than actually being killed, and that was quite powerful. And then obviously it was his Kent's own motives was actually revealed later on in the story when the Doctor pretending to be Salamander and Kent still thought that was the Doctor. Kent thinking that was Salamander, and they decided to have this little conversation, and then he accidentally reveals about the bunker that was underneath, and then he didn't know that was the Doctor at the whole time, and that pretty much proved the Doctor's hunch that Kent was pretty much not to be trusted, because he realized that how the murder was clearly not the way to deal with Salamander, and the Doctor was proved right, and that's how we found out Giles Kent's true ulterior motives when he actually wanted Salamander disposed of so he can actually take care of those people that were actually in the underground bunker. Another character that was quite nice was Donald Bruce. Salamander actually appointed him as the role of the security chief, and he was a tough but fair man, and I actually like that. I mean, he was very wary of Salamander's character because of the deaths of Furia and Federin, and he actually decided to help the Doctor pretend to be Salamander, who was still impersonating Salamander, to defeat the actual Salamander. He was a very serious character, and you can definitely tell, and he does have a few funny moments. I think the first one was when Jamie and Victoria were in front of Salamander, but it was actually the Doctor, and then and then the Doctor was trying to prove his identity to Jamie and Victoria by pulling out a fake recorder and pretty much miming it. And Giles Kent was in no Giles Kent. Bruce is at the back, just he was just thinking, what is going on with these people? Who are they? It was a very funny scene, and he also gets another funny scene in. I think it was the last episode when he gives Jamie and Victoria the safe word to at least escape from the research base, the research center, and the code being redhead. And Jamie was like, "Oh, is that your wife?" And Bruce just gives him one hell of a death stare. It was very funny as well. Characters I liked, but they all died, were Alexander Denish, Federin, and Ferrier. They all died at the hands of Salamander, both directly and indirectly, but I think Federin's death was actually caused directly by Salamander because Federin failed to poison Denish, and then Salamander was like pretending to be like, "Oh, all is forgiven," and decides to give him a drink, but that drink was actually tainted with poison, and then Federin just drops dead, and that was just horrible to watch, and that was quite scary as well. But compared to the three I mentioned, I have to say that Faria actually stood out for me the most. She was Salamander's personal food taster, and she disliked Salamander, and she was pretty much a Stepford wife to Salamander. When she was saying that he told her to smile when she had to smile, and the reason why she became his food taster because I think Salamander had some information against Faria. I think that should have at least revealed on what it was to at least build her character a bit more, but more on that later. But she actually does die in episode 4 when she escapes from Salamander's house and goes to meet the Doctor with the file that Salamander was using to blackmail Federin to prove that Salamander is not to be trusted. And then she ends up getting shot in the back by Bennett's men, and obviously the guards, they didn't really like the fact they had to kill her. They were just thinking, why did we have to kill her? And then obviously not Federin, Bennett came on and was trying to get answers out of her, and then Faria, I think this is probably her dying moment of autumn. She was like, what did she say again? You can only die once, but someone has already beaten you to it, and then she pretty much just dies, and that was a pretty awesome death. But I do wish Faria was alive for at least towards the end of the story. Now, on to the villains of the Enemy of the World. We have the big bad Ramon Salamando, obviously played by Patrick Chardon. He was a well-respected dictator, but he's a very shady person. He was very cautious around him with his own security guards and his personal food tasters and all that. And Salamander was creating his own natural disasters, and that was catastrophic for everyone that was around that area. And he loved torturing and killing people who he did not like or disobeyed him. And now Charlton definitely portrayed that coldness that Salamander had, and Salamander, he also was telling those people in the underground bunker that he was pretty much just gaslighting them, saying that, there's a war up there, don't go up there, you'll pretty much die. And he was just pretty much feeding them false lies, and I felt really bad for them. And as I mentioned before, the way he killed Federin was really scary and really powerful. It was quite brutal as well. And I must say, Charlton actually portrayed a very convincing villain, and I give Charlton props for that. And I actually like the fact that the only time that Salamander and the Doctor actually met was actually in the final few minutes of episode 6, the final episode, and that's when they had that whole fight and Salamander was booted out of the TARDIS. Yes, and then it was actually very effective. And I actually like the fact that they didn't meet sooner, because if they met sooner, it probably would have ruined the whole atmosphere and the whole mood of the story. And I would actually go on to say that Salamander is probably the best second Doctor villain that is not a Dalek or a Cyberman, Yetis, Ice Warriors, is whatever. I mean, he's probably the best villain of season 5. One of the best villains of season 5. The other main villain was Bennett, and I would say he was more sadistic than Salamander, and that's saying something. You can really tell that he gets a kick out of killing people and making other people's lives hell, and especially when, as I mentioned before, when Jamie and Victoria after they were captured by Salamander, they were taken back to the research center, and then Bennett wanted to question Jamie and Victoria for himself, and he wanted to get answers out of Jamie, and was pretty much threatening to harm Victoria. I think he threatened to shoot her in the leg and was pretty much pulling her hair, and that was, I'm not sure, I think there was a bit of subtext that he probably wanted to rape her in front of Jamie or something, but that was quite scary to say the least. And in his demise, he gets arrested when Bruce catches him. This story, I would say, is very incredible, but there are a few instances with I think there are a few faults in this story that do put me off a little bit. I mean, for instance, I didn't really like how Freya died so early into the story. I mean, she was a very good character. I mean, you definitely tell that she was scared of Salamander, and she was pretty much telling Victoria that don't get caught up in Salamander's world. Get away from here as soon as you can. And then she obviously, the poor girl actually dies in episode 4. And I do wish that, I mean, she was a very cool, complex character. I mean, I do wish the writers did give her a bit of development, even though time constraints of this episode didn't really make it possible. Just, even though just a tiny bit, to maybe keep her alive, she would have probably assisted Giles Kent and Astrid Ferrier, to like help the doctor to the research center. That would have been a pretty decent plot. And obviously, I didn't really like how Jamie and Victoria were quite redundant after episode 4, where they returned in episode 5 from their holiday, and then they were just pretty much in the jail cell of getting questioned by Benek, and then after they reunite with the Doctor with Salamander, the Doctor pretty much tells them to go back to the TARDIS and wait there for him, and then the next time we see them is when Salamander, pretending to be the Doctor, is heading towards the TARDIS. I mean, considering the fact that that didn't really sit well with me, but I kind of overlooked that because it did quite a lot in episode 3. And another aspect I didn't like was the whole nuclear bunker plot that was appeared in episode 4. I mean, it was a bit confusing. I didn't really understand why it was there, and the two main people that they were focusing on, I think the name was Colin and Mary. I didn't really like them. I just found them a bit annoying, to be honest. I mean, I think they were trying to have them have some romance subtext to it, but that was a bit random to say the least. But it is what it is. To conclude this review, I would say The Enemy of the World is a nice James Bond pastiche and is very different to most of the Patrick Troughton era, and I'm glad this story was found so we can experience the opportunity to watch this story over and over again. And I would be giving this story a 9 out of 10. My next review will be The Rebel Fear, The Return of the Yeti, and the first appearance of one of the most iconic Doctor Who characters ever. So thank you for watching this review. Let me know your thoughts of this story and this review, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Until then, see you next time.